Have you ever worked your whole life to build something, trusted the people who were supposed to protect you with everything you had, and then watched them hand it all to someone else without even blinking? Someone who never worked a single day for it? Someone who had already destroyed every chance they were ever given? Because that is exactly what happened to me. And when I tell you every detail of what went down, the money, the lies, the proof, the moment I walked out of that house and never looked back, I want you to ask yourself one question: how long would you have stayed? My name is Amber. I am 22 years old. And the day I found out my college fund was gone, I was standing in my parents' driveway in my work uniform, still smelling like the restaurant where I had just finished a 6-hour shift. Let me tell you everything. Before I get into what happened, you need to understand who I am. I am Amber. I grew up in a mid-sized town in Ohio, the older of 2 kids. My brother's name is Caleb. He is 3 years younger than me, and from the moment he was old enough to charm people, he used it. I was the quiet one. The one who finished her homework without being asked. The one who got up early, stayed late, and never complained. My parents worked regular jobs. My dad, Ray, drove trucks for a shipping company. My mom, Patricia, worked the front desk at a dental office. We were not rich, but we were not struggling either. There was always food on the table and the lights were always on. What they told me, every time money came up, was that they were saving. Putting something away for college. My dad used to say it while loading the dishwasher after dinner. The fund is growing, Amber. You keep doing what you're doing, and you'll walk into college without owing anybody a dime. I believed him. I had no reason not to. I was 17 years old and they were my parents. That trust, the kind that runs so deep you never think to question it, is exactly what they used against me. It started on a regular Saturday in July, the summer before my senior year of high school. I had just come home from a morning shift at the restaurant where I waitressed on weekends. My uniform was sticky. My feet hurt. I was thinking about nothing except a shower and a nap. When I pulled up to the house, something looked different. There was a car in the driveway. A brand new one. Dark blue, clean off the lot, with a giant red ribbon tied around the hood like something out of a TV commercial. My first thought was that it was a mistake. Maybe a neighbor's delivery. But then I saw Caleb. He was standing next to it, laughing, dangling a set of keys in the air the way you would if you had just won the lottery. My mom was clapping. My dad had his arm around Caleb's shoulder with this enormous grin on his face. I stood there at the edge of the driveway with my work bag still on my shoulder and just stared. Nobody looked at me for a full 30 seconds. Not because they didn't see me. Because they were waiting for me to react so they could explain. That pause, that breath before everything changed, is the last moment I remember feeling like everything was still okay. My mom was the one who said it. She turned to me with a smile, that patient, careful smile that meant she had already decided how this conversation was going to go. She said it casually, like she was telling me she had switched the brand of dish soap. We used your college fund, sweetheart. Caleb really needed this. I heard the words. I understood them individually. But my brain could not put them together in a way that made sense. I said, "What do you mean?" She said it again, still smiling. The college fund. We used it for the car. He needed a fresh start. My chest went completely hollow. Not angry yet. Just empty, like someone had reached inside and taken something out without asking. I looked at my dad. He was still watching Caleb walk around the car, touching the hood, grinning. I said, "You mean all of it?" My dad finally turned to me. He did not apologize. He did not even look guilty. He just said quietly, like it was the most obvious thing in the world, "You'll figure something out, Amber. You always do." And that was it. No warning. No conversation. No vote. Just gone. They brought me inside after that. I think they expected tears or shouting, or for me to go dramatic on the front lawn so the neighbors could see. I did not do any of those things. I sat down at the kitchen table in my dirty uniform and I listened. My mom did most of the talking. She said Caleb was at a turning point. That he had been struggling. That he needed something to motivate him, something to make him feel like he had a future. She said the car would help him find a job, show up to interviews, get his life on track. My dad nodded along. Neither of them looked at me while they spoke. They were talking to the table. I sat very still and I let them finish. Then I said, very quietly, I worked 2 summers for that money. I skipped the senior trip. I turned down plans every weekend because I was saving time for studying so the fund would not go to waste. I trusted you. My mom's expression changed then. Not to guilt. To something sharper. She said, Amber, you are the responsible one. You will be fine. We knew you could handle this. I remember thinking, that sentence was not comfort. That sentence was a verdict. They had already decided what I was worth, and they were telling me to my face. That night, after dinner, after Caleb had taken his new car out to show his friends, I went to my room and opened my laptop. My parents had always said the account was in my name as a joint fund. They controlled it until I turned 18, which was 4 months away. I logged in with the password I had never had reason to change. The balance loaded slowly. I stared at the screen. $0. Not low. Not partially drained. 0. I scrolled through the transaction history. There were 2 large withdrawals. One from 3 weeks ago. One from 6 days ago. Together, they added up to every single dollar that had been built up over 8 years of savings, birthday money, and the contributions I had made from my own waitressing checks. I took screenshots of everything. All of it. The dates, the amounts, the account name. Then I sat back in my chair and something happened inside me that I had never felt before. It was not sadness. It was not rage. It was something colder than both of those things. It was the feeling of a door closing. Quietly. With a lock clicking into place on the other side. The next evening, we had dinner together like always. Caleb was in a great mood. He had driven around all day and already had stories about it. He leaned back in his chair and said, grinning, Relax, Amber. You weren't even using it yet. My mom laughed. My dad smiled. I sat completely still with my fork in my hand and I felt the temperature inside me drop about 10 degrees. I looked at all 3 of them. My mom with her wine glass. My dad with his comfortable expression. Caleb, who had never once in his entire life faced a consequence he could not get rescued from. I put my fork down. I stood up. I looked at all of them and I said calmly, just 2 words, I'm done. Caleb rolled his eyes. My mom said, Sit down, Amber. You're being dramatic. My dad said, Let's not make this bigger than it needs to be. I did not sit down. I walked to my room. I pulled my duffel bag from under the bed and I started packing. They thought it was a moment. They thought I was acting out, performing frustration, and that by morning I would come back to the table and we would all move on. They did not know I was already gone. I packed light. 2 bags. My clothes, my laptop, my documents, my screenshots. I texted my coworker Paula to ask if I could sleep on her couch for a few days while I figured things out. She said yes without asking a single question, which I will never forget. I came downstairs at 11 at night with my bags. My mom was in the hallway. She looked at the bags. Then she looked at me. She said, Where do you think you're going? I did not answer. I kept walking. She called after me as I opened the front door, Don't be ungrateful, Amber. Everything we do for this family. I walked out. I did not turn around. I closed the door behind me, soft, not a slam. That was the last time I would sleep in that house. I sat in Paula's car in her parking lot for about 10 minutes before I went inside. Not crying. Just breathing. I kept thinking about that word my mom used. Ungrateful. As if gratitude was something you owed people for spending 8 years of your savings without telling you. Paula's couch was narrow and the springs dug into my back. I did not care. For the first time in weeks, nobody could take anything from me while I slept. I had about $900 in my personal account, the one my parents did not have access to. The account I had opened myself at 16 with my own waitressing money. $900 is not enough to build a future on. But it is enough to start thinking about one. The first thing I did was call my school's guidance counselor, Mr. Addo, first thing Monday morning. I told him what happened. Not every detail, just enough. He listened without interrupting, which surprised me. When I finished, he said, "Come in today after school." I did. He spent 45 minutes on the phone making calls while I sat across from him. By the end of that meeting, he had found me an emergency scholarship through a local community foundation and connected me to a part-time position in the school's administrative office that paid $12 an hour. It was not the future I had planned, but it was a door that was still open, and I walked through it. 3 weeks after I left, my mom texted me. I had not reached out to anyone in the family since the night I packed my bags. The text said, "Are you done with your little tantrum?" That was the whole message. No check-in. No apology. No "Are you safe?" or "Where are you sleeping?" Just that. Like I was a child who had stormed off over a broken toy and needed to be told to grow up and come back to the table. I read the message 4 times. Then I put my phone face down on the counter and went back to studying. I did not respond. I made a decision in that moment that I would communicate with my family only when there was something practical that required it. My feelings, my location, my progress, my pain, none of that was their business anymore. What I noticed over the following days was that my silence was doing something to them that no argument ever could have. They had always expected me to come back. My silence was the first thing in 18 years that they did not have an answer for. About a month after I left, my cousin Bria called me. She was not calling to take sides. She just wanted to catch up, she said. But 10 minutes into the conversation, she mentioned Caleb. She said the car situation was already becoming complicated. Apparently Caleb had backed the new car into a concrete post in a parking lot and left a long scrape down the entire rear panel. He had not told my parents. They found out through a family friend who saw it parked outside a convenience store. On top of that, Caleb had missed 2 interview appointments he had promised to keep. The whole justification for giving him the car, that it would motivate him, that it would get him moving, that it would change his pattern, had lasted exactly 1 month. I was not happy about that. I want to be clear about that. I did not feel good hearing that Caleb was failing again. But I noticed something sharp and honest inside me. I was not surprised. Not even slightly. My dad called me on a Thursday evening. I almost did not pick up. Something made me answer on the 4th ring. He did not start with hello. He started with, "You are tearing this family apart, Amber." His voice was tired, but there was still an edge in it. That edge that told me I was supposed to feel guilty for that. He said my mom was stressed. He said the house felt different. He said I owed them respect and that family did not just walk away from each other over money. I let him finish. Then I asked him one question, slowly and clearly, "Do you regret what you did?" There was a silence on the line that lasted about 8 seconds. I counted them. Not because I expected an answer. Because I wanted to hear what silence sounded like when someone who has never apologized in their life is forced to face a question they cannot answer without admitting fault. He did not answer. So I said, "Okay." And I hung up. I sat with my phone in my hand for a while after that. Then I made dinner, ate at my desk, and kept studying. By spring semester of my freshman year of college, I had 3 things going at the same time. The emergency scholarship Mr. Addo helped me find. A part-time job at the campus library, 12 hours a week. And a waitressing shift on Saturday nights at a restaurant near campus that paid better than the one back home. I was exhausted most of the time. I ate a lot of cheap pasta and canned soup. There were nights I stayed up until 2 in the morning finishing assignments and then got up at 6 to open the library. But something was happening in those months that I had never experienced before, not in the same way. Every grade I earned felt different from how grades felt before. Every dollar I made felt different. Not because the struggle was romantic or because hardship is a gift. It is not. But because for the first time in my life, everything I had was mine. Nobody could make a decision about it without me. Nobody could take it and explain it away with a sentence. I did not need my parents to be proud of me. For the first time, I was proud of myself. That is not a small thing. That is everything. About 4 months into my first semester, my Aunt Claire reached out. My mom's older sister. She was kind enough about it, said she just wanted to check on me. But within a few minutes, she mentioned that my parents had been telling the extended family their version of events. According to them, I had abandoned the family. I was selfish. I was ungrateful. I had walked out over something small and was now refusing to come home. Multiple cousins, aunts and uncles had heard this version. Some of them believed it. I had expected this. In fact, the night I packed my bags, I had thought very clearly, they will rewrite this story. People like my parents always do. They had done it with Caleb's dropped classes. They had done it with the crashed car before this one. They had done it with every consequence they had ever helped him avoid. They were practiced at turning their choices into somebody else's fault. I told my Aunt Claire calmly that I was happy to share my side of the story with anyone who wanted to hear it, and that I had documentation if anyone had questions. She went quiet. I think she had not expected that word. Documentation. Once I knew they were telling people a different story, I went back to everything I had saved. The screenshots of the bank account. The zero balance. The transaction dates. But when I looked more carefully, something stopped me cold. I had been so focused on the final withdrawal that I had not examined the full account history. I went back further. 6 months before the car. 8 months. A year. There were smaller withdrawals I had never noticed. $40 here. $120 there. They were labeled as maintenance fees and fund adjustments. I opened a spreadsheet on my laptop and I started adding them up. By the time I got to the beginning of the records, the total of those smaller withdrawals, across 3 years, added up to over $2,000 that had been quietly removed before the car ever happened. This was not a single bad decision made in desperation. This had been going on for years. Draining slowly, quietly, a little at a time, while they smiled at dinner and told me the fund was growing. I called my mom. Not to reconnect. Not because I missed her. Because I needed to hear her explain this to me in her own words. I told her what I had found. The smaller withdrawals. The 3 years of quiet draining. She was silent for a moment, and then she said, "We always plan to replace it." Just like that. Calm. Like it was a reasonable thing. Like a plan they never executed was the same as actually doing it. I said, "Did you replace it?" She said, "We intended to." I said, "That is not what I asked." She went quiet. Then she said it was complicated. That things came up. That they had expenses. I said, "Those were my savings. Not yours." She started to explain again. I said, "I have all of it documented. The amounts, the dates, all of it." Another silence. This one longer. Then, almost quietly, she said, "We always planned to put it back." And I understood then, with complete clarity, that they had never planned to put it back. The plan had always been that I would be fine. Because I was always fine. Because I had never once in my entire life stopped being fine for them, and they had built their entire financial strategy around that fact. I blocked them after that. All of them. My mom. My dad. Caleb. I did it on a Tuesday afternoon sitting at my desk between a history assignment and a shift at the library. It was not dramatic. It was not emotional in the way people might expect. I went through each contact one by one and I blocked the number. Then I went through social media, every platform, and I removed access there too. No announcement. No farewell message. No last word to land. I just disappeared from their ability to reach me. I told my cousin Bria what I had done so that she would not be blindsided if my parents called her looking for me. I told her I was fine and that I would reach out when I was ready. She said, "I understand." Then I made tea, sat down, and finished my history assignment. What surprised me was how quiet everything felt afterward. Not empty. Just quiet. Like a noise I had gotten so used to that I had stopped hearing it was suddenly gone, and the silence it left behind was actually peaceful. Within about 2 months of cutting off all contact, I started hearing things through Bria. Not because I was looking for information. She would check in on me, and sometimes things came up. Apparently, without me as the one who managed, organized, and held things together from a distance, a few practical things had started slipping. My mom had apparently counted on me to help her remember certain bill renewal dates because I had done that quietly for years. Without those reminders, one of their car insurance renewals was late, which resulted in a fee. My dad had apparently been using me as a go-between with Caleb during their arguments, texting me to mediate even after I moved out. Without that, those arguments had nowhere to land. And Caleb himself was struggling with the car payments. A debt he had skipped for 2 months already. I was not satisfied by this. I want to say that clearly. But I noticed something important. The systems they had built around my constant availability, my dependability, my willingness to be useful, were systems they had never built for themselves. I had not been their daughter. I had been their infrastructure. The internship offer came in March of my sophomore year. A regional finance firm downtown was offering a 10-week summer internship to 3 students from my college's business program. I had applied in January on a whim, not really expecting anything. My grades were strong. My application essay was honest about where I had come from. I wrote about learning to build something real when everything you saved was taken from you. About discipline not as a personality trait but as a survival skill. The interviewer called me on a Thursday and offered me the position before I even had time to prepare a response. The pay was $17 an hour. It was more money than I had ever made in a consistent, structured way. More than the waitressing, more than the library hours. I hung up the phone and sat completely still at my desk for about 2 minutes. I thought about my dad's voice the night I found out the fund was gone. "You'll figure something out, Amber." He said it like it was a dismissal. Like I was someone else's problem now. But what he had actually done, without meaning to, was predict the most accurate thing anyone has ever said about me. They showed up at my apartment in late October of my sophomore year. I did not know they were coming. There was a knock at my door on a Sunday afternoon, and when I looked through the peephole, I saw my mom and dad standing in the hallway. My mom was holding a small plant, the kind you buy from a grocery store flower section when you feel like you need to be holding something. My dad had his hands in his jacket pockets and was looking at the floor. I stood at the door for a moment. Then I opened it. I left the chain on. I looked at them through the gap. My mom's eyes were red at the edges. My dad looked like he had not slept properly in a while. Neither of them looked like the people who had stood in the driveway clapping for Caleb. They looked smaller. My dad said, "Can we come in?" I said, "No." My mom said, "Amber, please." I said, "You can talk to me from there." There was a pause. My mom looked at the plant she was holding and then back at me. And I waited. Because after everything, the least they could do was find the right words on their own. They apologized. Or they tried to. My mom went first. She said she was sorry that things had gone this far. That she missed me. That the house was not the same. My dad said he should have handled it differently, that the decision was wrong, that they had not thought it through. I listened to all of it through the gap in the door, with the chain still in place. They were sincere in the way that people are sincere when they are uncomfortable, when the absence of someone has finally cost them enough that they want it to stop. But then my mom said it. She said, "We just want things to go back to normal." And there it was. Not accountability. Not a plan. Not even a real acknowledgement of the specific thing they had done. Just the desire for comfort. For the old arrangement. For me to come back and make things easier and be the responsible one again, which had always been code for be the one who quietly absorbs whatever we need from you. I thought of something my counselor Mr. Addo had said to me once, "An apology that asks you to forget is not an apology. It is a negotiation." I looked at my mom holding that grocery store plant. And I knew. I took the chain off the door. Not to let them in. Just so I could speak to them properly without feeling like I was hiding. I stood in the doorway and I said what I had been carrying for almost 2 years. I said, "You did not just take money. You took something I had worked for, saved for, and trusted you with. And when I found out, you sat at a table and told me I would be fine. You told Caleb to relax. You laughed. And then you let him drive away in a car that was bought with my future." My dad tried to speak. I raised my hand, not aggressively, just clearly, and he stopped. I said, "I am not saying this to punish you. I am saying it because you have never once heard it from me without me softening it. And you need to hear it without the softening. My mom was crying quietly. My dad stared at the floor. I said every single thing I had thought about in library shifts and late study nights and long walks back from the restaurant. And for the first time in my life, they listened. They did not interrupt. They did not redirect. They just stood there and they listened. When I finished, I stepped back slightly and I said this slowly, so it landed correctly: you do not get access to my life anymore. Not the way things were before. That version is gone. My dad looked up. His eyes were wet. My mom pressed her hand to her mouth. I said, that is not said in anger. I am not standing here raging at you. I am telling you a fact. The relationship we had, where I was the one who managed and absorbed and made things smooth, that is done. If there is ever going to be something between us, it will have to be completely different from what it was. My mom said, what does that mean? I said, it means I do not know yet. And that is something you will have to be okay with. I was not shaking. I was not crying. I felt something that I can only describe as clear. Like a room after all the windows have been opened at the same time. My dad nodded, once, slowly. He did not say anything else. My mom looked at the plant in her hands like she did not know what to do with it. I told them to have a safe drive home. And I closed the door. Bria told me about the car in November. Caleb had missed 3 consecutive payments on the auto loan my parents had taken out for it. The bank had sent 2 warning letters. On the 3rd missed payment, the car was repossessed from the parking lot of his apartment complex at 7 in the morning. He had come outside to leave for a job he had started 3 weeks earlier, which had gone better than his previous ones, and the car was not there. He called my parents. My parents called the bank. The bank explained that the loan terms had been clear and that the window for resolution had passed. The car was gone. Caleb blamed my parents for not helping him manage the payments. My parents blamed each other for not staying on top of it. According to Bria, the argument lasted 2 days, and at one point my dad left the house and stayed at a cousin's place overnight. The system they had built, bailing Caleb out, absorbing consequences, passing them along to whoever could handle them, which had mostly been me, was finally facing itself. There was no buffer left. And the weight of it was falling on the exact people who had made it. I graduated on a Saturday in May. The ceremony was held on the main quad and it was raining lightly, the kind of rain that is more mist than water, and the grass smelled clean. I walked across that stage in a black gown with my name on a card that the dean read out loud, and I shook a hand and I took my diploma and I walked back to my seat. There was no family section with signs. No one holding a phone up to film me. My friend group from campus sat 3 rows behind me, and when I crossed the stage, they cheered loudly enough that people around them turned to look. Paula, who had let me sleep on her couch in high school, had driven 2 hours to be there. Mr. Addo had sent a card to my campus mailbox that I found the morning of the ceremony. He wrote, "You were always going to get here. You just needed to believe what I already knew." I sat in my folding chair after my row was done, and I looked at the stage and I thought about the driveway, the red ribbon, the hollow feeling in my chest. And then I thought about everything I had built between that moment and this one. Every single piece of it mine. They reached out again, about 6 months after graduation. A handwritten letter, my mom's handwriting. It said they were proud of me. That they had made a terrible mistake. That my dad cried when Bria told them about the internship. My mom wrote, "We know we don't deserve a place in your life. But we hope someday there is space for us to do better." I read it twice. Folded it. Put it in a drawer. Not because I had forgiven them or refused to, but because I had not decided yet, and I have learned I am allowed to take time with decisions that matter. I am Amber. I am 22 years old, and I built every single thing I have with my own hands. Here is what I need you to take from my story. Trust must be earned and protected, even from family, especially from family. Documentation is not paranoia, it is protection. Screenshot and save everything that matters. Leaving is not failure. Sometimes walking away is the only way to force people to face what they built. And being called the responsible one is not a compliment when it is used as a reason to take from you. You are not a resource. You are a person. If the people who were supposed to love you treat you like a tool, you are allowed to put yourself down and walk away and build something they have no part in. Please like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to this channel. In the comments, tell me, has someone ever used your trust against you? I am listening.